on the other one, you bastard!
Power the Primes. If you've watched this channel, you know just how terrible it truly was. Over the years, I have discussed practically every small-scale figure that the line has put out, except one. And there's not a lot to talk about this one, but it is the last one I need to cover, so that's one step closer to reviewing every single small-scale figure. At this point, I'm just kind of doing it out of obligation, though. I don't really have that much interesting to say about it. To be fair, though, when it came to the design of the figure itself, well, Hasbro wasn't putting their best foot forward either. So on first glance, something already seems up. So what is a buggy supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be aerodynamic. It's supposed to be incredibly fast, but also be able to cross difficult terrain. You can have larger buggies, but the kind of design this is going for doesn't really fit it. When you just take a look at it without going very deep into the design, it seems fine enough, and there is some remarkable mechanical detail here. I mean, take a look at that engine at the back there. That is marvelous. The lovely grey paint and the lovely silver, yeah, it's fantastic. They've even painted the hubcaps, which is nice as well. But you can't help but feel something is off here. The arms, for starters, look incredibly out of place. They just stick here and there's no cohesion with the front of it. You've got a huge bulky back section and a very slender front section, and the two just do not work. There's a dichotomy between the two. So, what's the problem with this? Why is it so uncohesive? Well, there's two primary reasons. One, they're trying to copy the G1 design without really understanding where it's coming from. Now, I'm not one to go for crazy G1 accuracy. If you want to do your own thing, that's fine. But this isn't trying to do its own thing. This is trying to copy a G1 design without really understanding what made it work. For comparison, let's just bring in two different G1 renditions. We have the original Legends version from the Classics/Generations line, I'm not really sure where, but this was in one of the Takara 3-packs. It's one of the old Legion Legend figures. And we've also got the Magic Square version, which I've reviewed prior. Take a look at these two. Even with the stylization they've gone for here, it is a nice, slender design. Especially here too, they're very dynamic. The problem is this exists halfway between stylization and homage, and it doesn't really commit to either of them. It goes for a much bulkier aesthetic, but it's still so steeped in the original cartoon and toy that it just doesn't work. There's no main aesthetic here, it's just all over the place. At least when they took a different aesthetic for this buggy, it actually made sense and had a cohesive design. Everything here fits remarkably well. And then if you're going for crazy G1, which I imagine an eventual deluxe version would, then that's probably what's going to end up with the vehicle mode. A much simpler, much more G1 style. This is half G1, half stylized, and it just does not work. It just fits in the middle. And you may be wondering, why didn't they commit to a single aesthetic? Why did this turn out the way it did? Well, it's the same reason that tailgates didn't have any thigh swivels. It's a Power of the Primes Legends figure, and you know what that means. You pull this section up, and Beachcomber can fit a Prime Master / Titan Master / whatever you feel like. All of that so that they could fit in that gimmick. I didn't think we'd see intrusive gimmicks this late in mainline, because I thought they'd gone beyond that in recent years, but apparently here we are. I get that they had to do that, but because they had to do that, the alt mode suffers greatly. Because of the parts count, they can't even engineer a head cover back there. The head's just sitting there in that giant cavity. All so that they can fit in a Prime Master. To me, that just feels pathetic. I'm sorry, it's not that great. I don't think the alt mode is extremely bad. I just think it's a bit confused in what it's trying to do. What I mean to say is they definitely could have done a lot better. In fact, they have done a lot better in the past. Just commit to the stylization or commit to the G1 aesthetic and get rid of the intrusive gimmicks. Then you've got yourself a great Beachcomber alt mode. But how does the robot mode fare? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. First off, he is roughly 8.5 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide, and 4 centimeters tall. And that brings us to our size comparisons. Here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Legends figure, and you can really see he has a lot of mass to him, except he doesn't is completely hollow. They've hollowed him out to make way for the gimmick, and I don't like that. A standard Earthrise Micromaster, and Crumbs. After removing the Titan Master, or Prime Master, or whatever you have in there, the transformation is pretty simple. Remove the top part there, that'll give enough clearance to bring the legs out, push in the front bar into the feet, separate the legs, separate the arms, and finally push everything down like so. And in robot mode, again they're going halfway between the stylization and the G1 cartoon design, or the G1 toy design, take your pick. You want to make Beachcomber into a beefcake, fine, then go further. Don't just recreate his G1 form. If you want to do G1, then he needs to be slender. Pick one or the other, commit to a design. The way this turns out, it really doesn't work. I get that some of the stylization elements are because of the gimmick. They wanted to fit the Titan Master, I keep saying Titan Masters because they're better, Time Masters inside the chest area, so it made sense that they had to stylize it. But it just makes everything look incredibly off. You've got a huge boxy chest, and that would work fine if you had a man of boxes aesthetic. But no, you've got tiny noodly arms with oversized hands to try and compensate for the aesthetic, but they don't really work well. Thing is, they already got the design to work once in the past. Yes, the arms are compromised, but that's mainly due to the year it came out in. That's a newer toy, so obviously there's going to be less kibble. But this toy, for all intents and purposes, manages to pull off the aesthetic far better. That is what Power of the Prime's Beachcomber should have been, and what we got instead is just disappointing. Or because that stupid gimmick meant they had to stylize the chest, but they couldn't stylize it too much because then it would be too far from the G1 toy in cartoon, so they ended up having dissonance between the chest and the limbs. I mean, the head sculpt's nice, it's a nice head sculpt I suppose, but just that's better in every single way. And again, I'm not asking for something as absurd as the third-party offerings. Even as far as Magic Square standards go, that's an amazing figure. Lightning in a bottle that they haven't replicated that much. I'm just asking for him to have a cohesive aesthetic like this figure here. As it stands, it's just a disappointing Beachcomber. Now, funny thing, before I started filming today, one of my friends notified me that back in the day, many people considered this to be the best articulated Legends figure of the time, and, like, no? It's got everything you could expect with a head swivel, ball joints at the shoulders, ball joints at the elbows, ball joints at the hips, thigh swivel that works normally, and a bend that goes well beyond 90 at the knee. But here's the thing, that's the same as practically every other Legends figure. That is the standard. And sure, there have been examples that have foregone these key elements of articulation, but that doesn't make this version of Beachcomber great. That just makes him adequate. I mean, he doesn't have a waist swivel like Cosmos, or shifting hips like Shockwave. He doesn't really have anything that makes him amazing. He's just adequate. It feels to me like the designers just made him out of obligation. They were running out of mini-bots to do, so they decided to do Beachcomber, and they did him to the most standard level, not going above and beyond the Call of Duty. Anyway, I want to finish this off so I never have to discuss Power of the Primes on this channel again, hopefully. He's roughly 5.5 centimeters wide since the shoulders splay out a little bit, and surprisingly 8.5 centimeters tall as well. And of course, next to your standard Legion figure, your standard Legends figure, and again, he's just hollow and bulky when the arms are so spindly it doesn't work. Your standard Earthrise Micromaster, and of course, Crumbs. And that's it. That's the last time I ever have to discuss a Power of the Primes small-scale figure on this channel. Hopefully forever, unless I decide to remake their reviews in the future. I might do that eventually, but for now, that's it. I'm done. What I see here is Hasbro designing a wave filler. A simple generic mini-bot update just to fill the gaps between the figures they actually want to make. And in Power of the Primes, there are only really two Legends figures they wanted to make, Slash and Battle Trap. Everything else was pretty much filler, and this falls right into it. So they didn't give it much attention. They just f***ed up the chest, decided to make everything else G1 without realizing what G1 entails. And in the end, it just ends up being a clash of aesthetics, and really not worth it. Don't get me wrong, I categorically cannot call him bad. He is passable, but he's so boring. I look at this, and I look at the new Kingdom mini-boss that they're doing, and I see a bright future where they redo this character with proper engineering. And even if they don't, you've always got the Legion version, that's still pretty good. But as it stands, just don't bother with this figure, there's nothing here. He's not good enough to be memorable, he's not bad enough to be memorable, he just falls in that valley of mediocrity. And in some cases, that's one of the most offensive things a toy can do. Not according to the community though, because many people are perfectly fine and think it's perfectly acceptable to have a forgettable character. That's fine, but redoing a beloved character in a new alt mode? No, that's blasphemy. So tomorrow, let's see if the fandom getting angry at this is really justified, although we all know this song and dance, it really isn't, and I'll show you why tomorrow.